Hi, everybody. This is Aaron with Fleetistics, and today I'm with Kim Toman, who is our business analyst. Between the two of us, I think we have over 40 years of GPS tracking and telematics experience. So we have seen quite a few things over those years. And today we're going to be talking about introducing GPS tracking and telematics to your employees. When we look at our analytics on our website, this is actually one of the most popular web pages that we have. And we get a lot of questions and have always gotten a lot of questions about, what do employees think? What's going to happen? Are employees going to quit? Things of that nature. And so we created a guide, which we will link to, so you can download the guide and you can read through this information on your own at your own speed and time. And we're going to talk about a lot of things in those guide, but that guide's there for you to access and to utilize and to reference and really kind of take it, make it your own, and then use that to create a plan. So everybody that is part of this decision-making process is comfortable with the way this is going to go. So Kim, kind of get us started with some of the things that you have seen, or what are some of the initial comments that people need to know and understand about rolling this technology out?
Sure. So, just a little background, having us been in the industry for so long, I think that in today's day and age, especially in service and delivery type atmospheres, it's probably few and far between where a driver hasn't at some point worked for a company that has a GPS telematics device installed. So it's a little bit easier to kind of have that introductory meeting. But some of the things that initially, when this technology came out, is it's always had this negativity surrounding the big brother atmosphere. And that is really not at all what this is. We definitely promote it from an efficiency perspective, improving different route management. It's really to monitor your fleet, the increased fuel savings. So it's not designed for somebody to sit in front of a computer and watch dots on a map. That's not the functionality. And we want to explain and communicate why it's being deployed within our organization. I have sat on numerous different company meetings where, as the GPS representative, I could handle some of the technical type questions. And then when it comes to some of the policy questions where somebody says, what happens if I do get caught speeding? Well, that's something that is definitely going to have to internally be determined by company policy and upheld. In my opinion, if you have all this data, you really have to instigate some policies that surround it that also fit with the culture of your organization as it is today. Otherwise, the data is just data. And as we know, it just provides you with information. It's what you do to act on it. So the first thing I would recommend is that once you have the solution, before you even get it installed in the vehicles, I would sit down, and if you have to do it in groups because of shifts, that's fine, but sit down with your employees and explain why and that you are deploying the solution in your fleet. This will not only give them the opportunity to ask questions about it, but you're being open and upfront with them. You're not trying to sneak a solution in and then be, for lack of better words, shady as to why you're deploying it. You are being open and upfront about the efforts you are to maintain savings, keep the drivers safe. As I've probably said in some of these other videos, it's all about every driver coming home safely every day. So that is part of the functionality of the solution. So it's really an effort into how you describe it and position the solution, because it can really be a benefit to the employees as well. They can be rewarded for good driving behavior and coached for bad.
Yeah, back when this whole thing started, we got a lot of requests for, hey, can you install it so nobody knows, right? And 100% of the time, the response is yes, but it's a really, really bad idea.
Yeah.
If you do something like that, you're driving a wedge into the team, right? And Management is just another employee that has a different function than a field service technician that goes out and interacts with the customers and generates the revenue. Doing something to split the team, like quote unquote spying on somebody out there, doesn't do anybody any good. If the team is moving in the same direction, then this is a technology that is going to benefit the team, and you have to approach it that way. Now, I'm a little bit less concerned about the Big Brother approach. Myself, Big Brother's part of it. When I first rolled GPS tracking technology out, and I was a customer, I was a user back in the '90s. Big Brother was a part of it. It was, you can't deny that. And I think if you do, and this is my opinion, if you try to say it's not Big Brother, people are going to look at you like you're lying, right? Because you will catch people doing something wrong. But what we want to do is focus on catching people doing something right, and make it that positive experience versus a negative experience. So, any part of a business that you have checks and balances and audits, right? And when you send somebody into the field, what's your method of checks and balance and audits, right? You have a service ticket. That's only a very small snapshot of a function being reported by somebody, as opposed to, we need to verify routes, we need to verify stop times, service quality, perhaps PTO monitoring, things of that nature, that all indicate that the level of service that we're delivering is top notch. So those are some things to keep in mind. But I do like the group setting, the rollout, answer some questions. They don't need to know how to run the system. They don't need to know, a whole bunch about how it works, but the fact that, hey, it's going to be there, and we've got a list of benefits in the download that you can get that list out all the different benefits. But selling that positive side and then reinforcing that positive on a regular basis is a key part of that.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, as a manager working for a company or a business owner, you want to make your business as effective, efficient, and profitable as possible. And why not take the opportunity to use this type of technology and harness those savings and additional revenue? Because it would be a bad business choice to think otherwise when it's proven that these solutions will save money.
And you can look at individual positive performance changes. So you can get a driver score, and you can work with each individual driver, but you can also look at the entire team. And a team might be a service group or a delivery group or a repair group. There's all these, a sales group, whatever the group is. Then you can start to look at the team as a whole, and look at the members within the team and help them understand how they're either meeting or not meeting the standards that are set. And you come up with best in class. Who are the top performers in each one of those groups? And then how do you measure metrics of the others to get them to achieve the same results? And then what we used to do is we used to post a ranking of those scores where everybody could see them. And you don't have to say much about them. People know being on the top, a good score is on the top and a bad score is on the bottom. And if you're on the bottom all the time, guess what? Eventually you're going to get called in and have a conversation because something's been going wrong.
Yeah, it's that gamification taking over. And it's actually a really good way to just sort of organically enforce your policies, because like you just said, nobody likes being at the bottom. So they're just inherently going to be trying to do better in the future. Inevitably, you're always going to have those employees that were doing something they weren't supposed to before, and they just refuse to adapt to the new technology and continue that behavior. That's why it's important to, in these meetings, to outline what your company policy is based on this telematics data, kind of incorporated into it. That way they understand up front, look, if you do this 3 times or you hit 80 miles an hour in my vehicle, that constitutes as immediate termination. Whatever that policy might be, as stringent or eased as it could be, that needs to be explained to them up front, because then they know, and they have no way to come back and say, well, I didn't know, and you've got these devices in there and it's not fair, and well, you shouldn't have been doing it, and we've given you multiple opportunities to correct that driving behavior. Look, we want to have you working for us outside of these little quirks with maybe some driving technique or things that you might not supposed to be doing. You're a very good employee and we want to be able to reward you for that, but we need to show that you're putting in your part as well and following our company policies, because essentially each employee is setting representation of not only your organization, but also the standards that you want to have represented as a company when you're in front of customers, when you are in front of other employees. It's just important to keep things consistent.
Well, you brought up like a half dozen things, rabbit holes that we can go down. The first one is you can't, I wouldn't recommend focusing on what happened yesterday, right? You've got a fresh start, you're putting new technology in, and what happens from this moment forward, is really where you're grading them and changing the level of accountability. The easiest example is if you have take-home vehicles and yesterday you were suspicious of somebody driving that vehicle after hours for something, but you're putting the technology in today, and going forward, if you drive the vehicle for personal use after hours, then that's on you. That we're able to monitor it. That we have standards, and you're choosing to violate that policy. The other thing is that like you said, some people are stubborn and some people aren't going to change. They're going to refuse to change. But at that point, they're making that choice to no longer work for you because they don't want to adapt and do the things that you've asked them to do as their employer. So it's completely reasonable to have an expectation that somebody does the things that you want them to do and how you want them to do it. You're paying them in exchange for their labor. You're paying them to do things in the manner that you've outlined. So it makes the opportunity for wrongful termination claims less. You get to protect your business from that type of thing. You get a fair process, so other employees get to see that you have taken multiple steps to try to retain people, because at the end of the day, the last thing we want to do is replace somebody. And if you think about the consequences of terminating somebody, from a business manager's perspective, I don't want to add work to my plate. But what do you do when you terminate somebody? I got to go to HR. I got to post a job. I got to review resumes. I got to do interviews. I got to, get drug testing done. I got to, bring them in. Now I got to put them on a training track. All of those things are a consequence of letting somebody go, where it is way, way easier just to get them to change the behavior, right? And you can do that in a positive way. So not everybody's going to be immediate to get on board. When I was with Orkin Pest Control back in the 90s, I had a technician that had 19 years of experience. I still remember his name. His name was Bart. And Bart would go to his customers' family events, birthdays, picnics. I mean, that's how close he was to the customers. And Bart actually quit Orkin because he felt that things had to be done his way and customers would never agree to change. Well, he was wrong. And after he quit and we ran his route anyway, and customers remained happy, he actually came back and said, you know what, I'm going to do this. I've had time to think about it. And within 2-3 months, Bart was singing the praises of being able to make his route more efficient and get the same amount of work done, because Bart was older at that point, and he was getting the same satisfaction and joy from the customer interaction, but he was getting done at 5:30 instead of 8:30. And he realized at his age he had more opportunities to go do the things that he wanted to do. So in the long run, that structure, accountability, efficiency allows those types of benefits that you don't realize come about in the in the long run. So really, it is a lot more than just hey, someone's going to be quote unquote spying on me. It is about making the business the best it can be.
Absolutely. I can say that if I were a fleet manager or of any business, whether it's government, private sector, and it didn't have GPS, I'd be pushing for it from day one.
Yeah.
I just think it's an invaluable tool.
I had GPS tracking on my truck. I brought the technology to Orkin Pest Control back in the 90s. And then as part of that rollout, it got put onto my truck. And I was never the type of guy that didn't do my job. But every time I ran into Quick Trip in Atlanta, I was thinking, I need to be efficient because in the old days, the antenna was on the roof. So every time you came out, it was a visual reminder that, hey, there's somebody that could be looking, and am I doing the right thing when no one is looking? And it was never a
Hmm.
problem, but it kept me, kind of focused on the concept of efficiency. So it wasn't a big deal, but it is a reminder. And posting driver scores in the break room is part of that process. So let's talk about policy. Have you any particular recommendations about policies? I know we have a policy that was originally written by Orkin back in the day that we'll also make available for download. People can read that and talk about it and what have you, make it their own,
Hmm.
replicate it. But what have you
Yeah,
seen in
because
policy?
as I recall, with the Orkin policies, there's certain ones that they have a little bit more extended for warnings after 1, 2, or 3. But there are, when I was referring to, hey, if you go 80 miles an hour or higher in one of our company vehicles, it's immediate termination.
Hmm.
Some companies might think that's a very harsh policy, but you know what? It's very smart. And safety is a culture. So we want to make sure that just as well as you have formed your safety policies, you format your GPS policies around those. So you tie them back to. So if you have a straight up 80 mile an hour, now they might have had that policy before they implemented GPS, but they had no way unless you rode around in the vehicle with the driver, which obviously is not productive. We have better things to do with our day, but it gave them that visibility. So the policy was there before. Now they're just tying it in with the tool that gives them the visibility to actually act on the policy. So my recommendation is to review your current company policies that you have today with your vehicles, and use those to implement your policy structure with GPS. So if you already have a 3-strike warning for if somebody does speed 10 miles over the posted speed limit, for example, wherever they are, then enforce that. Give them a warning, give them another warning, and then give them their final notice. You need to make sure you have some sort of policy. You got to give them time to fix that driving behavior. You can't just say, hey, you need to change this and then expect it to happen overnight. Give them a little bit of time to show you that they can do what the company policy is asking of them.
It
So
doesn't
that's
have to be, it doesn't have to be warning, warning, termination. It could be
right.
verbal warning, written warning, suspension, a 1 day off, 3 days off unpaid, and then termination, if you wanted to. I mean, find what's going to work for your business and the culture of your organization. Work can happen to be very strict. I had a service manager got fired. And this is the other point about policy. Don't roll out a policy that you are not willing to enforce, right? If you are going to say, if you drive 80 miles an hour, you're done, period, no exceptions, and then you don't enforce it the first time it happens because it's your best technician, then every technician after that's going to have a legal claim against you for not fairly applying, your policy. So be smart about what you're willing to do, and it varies by industry too. There's sometimes, and it's supply and demand, right? In some industries, technicians are super hard to find. It takes a long time to find somebody with the right skill set and experience to do the job that you want them to do. You've got to be more lenient to keep your business running. If you fire all your
Mhm.
technicians, what happens? Your business stops generating revenue. So you've got to apply that practical application component. But as supply increases, as there's more and more people available, then you can change the standards to be more and more strict. The other thing is, I would not bring this up in a meeting. By default, if you explain that, people can see where you go and what you do and where you stop and how long you're there. Everybody understands that there's this type of data is visible or creates visibility, right? So you don't need to have a negative conversation in the rollout conversation. They just need to know that this type of thing is available downstream for driver behavior modification. And I think the other thing is, well, if somebody drives 80 miles an hour, they get terminated. Well, the GPS systems today have buzzers in them, right? They can warn the drivers. They can
Yeah.
actually play an audio file that says, hey, you're speeding, you need to slow down. So it's very clear. There's no misinterpretation of the exception that's being generated. So it's not like it's all or nothing. There's this process that's important, and there's tools to help the drivers modify that behavior to keep everything fair. Because again, the last thing we want to do is turn over a position and have to start the hiring process and the training and experience process all over again.
I agree with you on that one 100%.
Have you ever seen drivers quit because of GPS?
Yes, I have. But the way I look at it, I try and put my brain in a business owner's mindset. And if they quit because you got GPS, then you probably didn't want them working for you in the first place, because God only knows what they might have been doing with that vehicle behind your back before. So, at that point, there are times where you just kind of got to wash your hands and move on, and so be it. That is their right. If they quit, they quit. It's not like they can come after for unemployment or anything like that. They left on their own recourse. So you give them the opportunity. All you're doing is making a business decision. To be honest with you, when you have employees that straight up quit like that, then I'm like, okay, well, at least I know now. And you just find somebody to replace them at that point, whether they were your best technician or not. There is a reason why they're going to make that decision. They either have something else lined up, they really can't deal with the GPS tracking them, or they're doing something they shouldn't be doing.
It's accountability. That's where the problem
It is.
lies. It's the accountability to do the things that need to get done. I can think of two stories. One is I have only known of one situation where in 21 plus years where 3 electricians quit, and they were generating $10,000 a month in overtime. And when the owner, it was a local electric company here in Tampa, when the owner announced that this was going to be implemented, those 3 guys quit before the GPS were ever installed, because they knew the game was over. They're going to just go to the next electrical company and do the same thing. And what they found was that the owners found was that the $10,000 a month in overtime went away immediately. They didn't have a lack of service. They took the 3 routes and they spread loaded amongst the other service technicians. They dropped their payroll by 3 people. They dropped their trucks by 3 people, and they got rid of $10,000 in overtime. That system literally paid for itself before it ever even got delivered to the customer's location. But that's the only time in 21 plus years that I know of that somebody quit, and obviously they were stealing. The other time was in Orkin back in the early part. We went from 32 routes to 27 because we were able to see the inefficiencies of the routes, and we took 6 routes. We spread load the customers across the 27 remaining routes. We got rid of 3 vehicles, 3 drivers, and not that we needed to, but we tried to find work for them elsewhere. It's not they were bad. They were just, there wasn't enough to do. Once the routes got efficient, there wasn't enough work to do to keep everybody busy. So they couldn't earn commission to feed themselves and things like that. So, some changes had to be made to help everybody. But those are the only 2 times I can think of.
I've only had that in one circumstance myself, and it's few and far between.
Very rare. Yeah.
Yeah. Very rare.
I wanted to run down. I'm just going to read the employee benefits that we have in this document, and there's 9 of them. So download it and then read the details, and then figure out how this relates to what you guys do. Higher customer retention. And you think, that's kind of interesting. So read on that one. Protection against false claims. We kind of mentioned that. Service time tracking. Is time at the job site a key component of quality service? When is it too much? When is it too little? A hands-free mileage log. How many miles are you driving on a route? Why are some routes driving more than others? Can you move to a vehicle take-home policy? And what benefit does that bring? Does it improve things, or does it cost more to allow that? And what are some of the things that you need to be thinking about? Increase company agency profits. How does accountability, efficiency, productivity all tie into the GPS data, and how does that lead to profitability? Number 7, what new incentives might be available based on the information that you're collecting? Number 8 is increased driver safety, right? I think we can think of a lot of things related to driver safety and how that impacts profitability, risk, everybody coming home at night, and those things. And then number 9, improve driver morale. And I'm not going to say anything else about that because that's really kind of like a big question mark that you get from how does morale get better because we've improved accountability across the organization. So, Kim, any final thoughts on introduction of GPS tracking and telematics to employees before we wrap it up?
No, well, actually, yeah, one thing I just want to reiterate that again, we want to enforce, please don't try and make this something that you're hiding from your employees. The more open you are about it, the more adapting that they're going to be to it, especially if they're brand new to the technology. It does become part of your culture within your organization, and you'll find the improvement and the honesty that you share with them is going to, there's a part of that question mark that you just threw out there. Believe it or not, that has an effect on building morale. You make a better work environment for everybody because things are running smoother, and then everybody's a little bit happier when they come to work. So just be open and honest, and make sure you make it very clear what your policies are in relationship to the technology.
I want to add a number 10 to that list, which is hiring better drivers right from the start.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say how or why that happens, but we'll add it to the document and make it available for download. And then you can go read about how do you hire a better driver before they've even gotten in your truck. So that's it for this particular video. If you like the video, please hit the like button down below, subscribe. We're doing more of these videos to help you basically run your business a little bit better, give you some ideas, some practical ideas on things that are going to help you across your business, not just your fleet, but whether it be accounting or marketing or customer service, things like that. We're just bringing our experience in working with so many different companies across the country back to you, so you can tweak and use what little bits of information you find important to you and grow your business. We want to see your business grow. When you're healthy, we're healthy. We appreciate your business, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a great day.
Bye.